Call this meeting to order. Can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Lorge. Here. Commissioner Finneman.
Here.
Commissioner Husnick.
Here.
Commissioner Huntosh.
Here.
Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
And Mayor Winnick.
All right, so we stand and pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you get a motion to approve the agenda that's in front of us tonight.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. And then, so the next item is to approve the minutes from the October 23rd meeting. Any motion there?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. Okay, the next one, approved bills and financial statements. Is there any discussion you had there?
President, members of the EDA, just a couple of routine items in there, and then you'll notice that there are some pay requests included that represents the release of some retainage on some of the city center construction.
All right. Need a motion to approve the bills and financial statements.
Unless you walk along with that proposition, it's hard to make any kind of judgment about any of it. So my only thought is if you see anything that's not appropriate or different, I don't follow it daily. Therefore, there's no way I can do anything other than abstain because I don't know how to make a judgment.
President, members of the EDA, as far as the pay requests go for the city center construction, we generally are being somewhat deferential to Kraus Anderson, who recommends that the work has been completed and they feel it's been done satisfactorily. So that's generally what we're relying on when we make that assumption.
Great. You want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the bills as written in the financial statements.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Great. Next item, greater MSP annual meeting update.
I just thought it'd be a good opportunity to have this on the agenda. I believe Commissioner Finneman and Commissioner Lorge had the opportunity to attend that, and if there's any updates or if it went well or anything, any takeaways, I think just an opportunity to digest on that a little bit.
Well, it's always interesting to watch the big boys play. There's a lot of power sitting in that room, and they get to feed off of each other's motivation, and they have a lot to be motivated by. New mayors. A lot of things have happened in the course of that year that were very successful. At any rate, it's just neat to take it in on that level. It'd be nice to be a microcosm of that level here. But there's a lot of partnership. The key word, partnership, inherent in their terms as well. A lot of a partnership talk and marrying together with everyone having a common interest in accomplishing something. Lots of divisions of lots of the city all working together. It was impressive.
I was surprised about the partnerships, what they encompass between corporations, private business, nonprofits, the schools, and government, all working together for common goals. And it was really a beautiful thing. A wonderful thing if we could shrink it down to Forest Lake size and have it work as well as what we saw there. It was very impressive.
All right. Well, I'll finish this last agenda item and I'll hand it back over to you. Thank you both for taking the time to go. I mean, out of your day, that's and have that representation from us. That was great. Thanks for the updates. So we're at number 8 right now.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Blake, and my apologies for being late tonight. Got caught in the cities and my phone is not working. So Aaron, do you want to take us on number 8, the senior bus, retail bus route?
Yep, President, members of the EDA, just this is more of an informational item. There's been some informal work that's happened on the potential for a senior retail bus route. This initially came up in the course of conversation with a group called New Tracks out of White Bear Lake, or there's in essence an equivalent group to our ESR. And Bailey, I don't know if you can cut me in here, where a lot of their day is focused on providing transportation options for people that have, some level of developmental disability and, kind of a transportation to their different work sites. But they have some room in there to provide some supplemental transportation, and they participate in some of the state funding programs for capital purchases of bus and related equipment. You may remember about 2 years ago, we had a similar conversation where we were actually looking to actually go a little bit higher of a level than this, where we were exploring the concept of a circulator transportation service in Forest Lake. And what that would involve, there was a couple of dedicated bus routes to do a fixed dial-a-ride transportation service, let's say 6 to 5 or 6 to 6, the timeframes were sort of being developed. But we priced that out based on pricing provided to us by the Santee and Chisago County provider, and looked at that, applied for some grants through the state for capital equipment purchase. And that particular iteration was looking to run a deficit of about $300,000 a year. And so there was going to have to be some level of public-private partnership to support that. And now the New Tracks model, they've actually developed it predominantly through private local investment, but they're providing a service in White Bear Lake where they have a loop system and providing different options to go to different retailers. And they complete this loop. It's married up with different senior housing facilities, and it's 1 day a week. And I think the price range for that is in that $10,000 to $15,000 per year range for 2 buses on 1 day of the week. And it's a more limited investment. And again, it kind of balances out with their morning shift. So I think this runs from, I think we can flip to the schedule here, but I think it runs from like 10 to 2 or 10 to 1:30, give or take. And it seemed like a nice potential first step into doing something like this. So Gary has been real active with this conversation, and Dennis Batty as well. Just real preliminary. This is potentially the kind of thing the EDA, if they wanted to, could support. There was some additional funding provided, or at least contemplated in this year's budget request. Not all of that's designated for specific purposes at this point, and so if there was a desire to kind of pilot this out to see how it worked for a year, that's certainly something that the EDA could explore. Dan did a really nice job of at least kind of putting a starting point to potential locations. And, the idea, there's a couple of ideas for Forest Lake. One is that it's we have the residences that we identified here, and you can see on the map in purple. We have the stores that would be on the list, and, this certainly could be subject to future evaluation. And Gary in a minute is going to tell you about a survey that he's been facilitating that might, add or subtract to that list depending on where the interest really is. But you can see that we could have a fairly consolidated loop here depending on what you're looking at. And the areas in yellow here are city facilities or city institutions, the senior center, city center, just downtown generally. And you could kind of develop a route based on some of these areas. Another option, if this was successful, would be to maybe do a health route on a different day of the week. And so you can see these health locations coming in. You take the retail out of it, and some of these health locations coming in where in the orange, and bringing people to medical appointments conceivably. So from a EDA perspective, I just thought it'd be interesting for you to hear about the conversation, to start and get some feedback on it. Maybe Gary, would you be willing to come up and just talk about the survey that you've been? Yeah, that'd be great. Right over here.
Mayor and EDA members. I put together, and this was put together with New Tracks to help, and they edited it, and it's a questionnaire, and I guess what I could pass around. I didn't bring any extra blank copies, but I've got some filled out copies if you want. We want to pass it around just to see what was asked. But basically, what was explained was that there's a possibility of having some limited transportation for seniors and disabled. I think you'd have to, consider both groups. And we went to the areas that Aaron highlighted here as far as senior housing, and actually including Birchwood and including Cherrywood Point and including the senior center. And we have responses. I think there were 5 different locations that I took the questionnaires to, and we got back 15 to 20 from each place, but I'm still waiting for 2 of them back. And both of those that aren't back are Birchwood and Cherrywood Point. And of course, both of those have their own activity buses, and they treat it differently, than this would probably end up. But I don't know if that's the hesitation for getting the survey completed or not, if that they already have some things that are set up. But the responses that came overwhelmingly medical appointments. The health services area is an overwhelming amount of the desire for a bus. And number 2 was shopping, and primarily grocery shopping. It included, we asked which ones that they wanted on the list, and it went all the way from Aldi's to Target to Cub to Walmart to the dollar store. We're listed in places that they'd like to have the opportunity to be dropped off. But the other thing that was kind of interesting is that there was a fairly large group, at least from one of the areas, that wanted to be dropped off at the senior center. That they were unable to drive, and they kind of quit the senior center because they weren't able to get there. And so that, what is included and how many stops there are and exactly how it functions, the good part about New Tracks is the fact that they do have some experience in White Bear, and it's working very well. And it starts slow. You won't have a full bus, for a while, because even with seniors in one building, if there's 3 or 4 of them that talk about, yeah, we'd like to do that, but they might say, well, you go and try it first and we'll see how it works and then we'll come later, type of thing. So and that was kind of their experience there. I'd say the other interesting part of it is the fact that they're willing to pay $1 or $2 type of thing. $2 to $5 was kind of the most suggested item, and do it something like a punch card or something like that to make it super simple, but they're not necessarily expecting it free. So it would, if it's $1 or $2 and there's 5 or 8 people, obviously it's not a big moneymaker, but it would bring in some revenue that would help offset, some of the subsidy that would be necessary. I'm kind of looking forward to the other 2 to add to it, and then Scott Olson is the guy from New Tracks, and once we have the rest of the deal, which will probably be by the end of this week, then maybe we'll schedule a follow-up meeting, with the guy from New Tracks and kind of get his feedback as to, okay, now here we got some needs, and I think we kind of all knew that we had the need. The one thing that I think a lot of people have high on their list is they'd like to be picked up at their door and taken somewhere. And of course that's not part of this. They're going to be, that'll be the door if they live in a senior living, but if they have their private residence to start with, at least it's not going to accommodate that. So that'll be one, deal that'll be maybe disappointing to some, maybe, but it won't be able to be available to begin with. So with that, I'd take any questions.
The businesses also would be a potential subsidy, would they not?
Could be. I don't know exactly how you would solicit that, but that's something that could be worked with, and maybe through the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know how that might flow, but that's a possibility certainly. Because if they're bringing 25 more customers every week to Walmart and Target or Aldi's or whatever it is, they may see the benefit of subsidizing that a little bit too and contributing something, you know. I don't know how their reaction would be. Maybe they think they already get those customers. I don't know about that, but you know, it would be ideal to have a kind of a civic business partnership. There's no question about that. And the other thing is that if it does go, it's the kind of thing that everybody has to think long term. You know, sometimes there's grants to do something and get it started, but you know, when you start something like that, you got to figure out that you're going to do this put it in the budget every year or that type of thing, so that it can continue. Otherwise, you know, a lot of projects fail if they run out of money the second year or the third year or whatever the case is. Thanks for listening.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Anybody else have any questions on it? Or?
So we're moving a little more research, and we're moving forward to seeing what kind of an actual agreement we could have with this particular purveyor. Is that where we're headed, to get it more finite?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an iterative process, so we want to get the idea out in front of you to get your feedback on it. If you think it's an idea that's worth continued effort, we certainly will do that. And, you know, I think the next step would be to assimilate and finalize all the survey information that's provided, and then really try to engage, you know, Nutrax on the potential for what an agreement might look like, at least a term sheet, just to understand, you know, time of day and amount of hours and annual costs and things along those lines. So I think that'd be the next step. And then ultimately, if there's something that the EDA is interested in piloting, we would, you know, make a recommendation based on those terms. And we can certainly try to solicit, you know, some of the business support. A lot of the businesses that are going to be most preferred to go to are going to be the most difficult to get money from, generally speaking, given they're more corporate, you know, and they've got their processes. And typically when you go to Walmart, they'll flip you to their foundation, and you can make an application through their foundation. But certainly it's not inconceivable that they're willing to participate.
Well, Gary's a good catalyst to keep these ideas moving, so I just hope we're receptive at this point, and we're doing what we can to help.
No, I think the dialogue's been good so far.
Is this just for seniors? Or, I mean, obviously it's focused for seniors, but it'd be available for anybody who needs a ride, or?
You know, with the way these particular buses are funded, it would be limited to seniors and people with disabilities. So I think when we originally contemplated our, you know, kind of dial-a-ride transit option, it was all-encompassing, a resource for, you know, kids all the way to seniors. In this case, the way Nutrax is funded, it does have to be limited to seniors.
Well, I guess a couple concerns I have with it is, you know, nobody out, you know, around the lake, except for downtown. If we're trying to keep seniors, you know, living in their houses, paying taxes, doing things like that, and this isn't available to a vast majority of those seniors that we're trying to, you know, provide a service to, that to me is a big concern. I guess the other question I'd raise is with, you know, technology out there with the Ubers and the Lyfts, you know, cost per ride that it would cost here versus can they just, you know, pick up their phone and call Uber or Lyft, and, you know, what is that going to cost? Because there's those service providers around as well.
Yep, so in this case, you have a situation where there is a parallel track. They're kind of a partner company that Nutrax has worked with, and it's sort of a Lyft type system for people with medical needs, you know, because you do have ADA accessibility issues, and anytime the public's involved, I mean, you know, those types of options aren't necessarily something we could probably be involved with unless it was, you know, a truly accessible vehicle and things along those lines, which these buses that Nutrax operates are. You know, it is difficult. If you're going to have a full dial-a-ride system, yeah, you'd want to have the entire community. I think one argument would be made is if you're still living in your home on the north side of the lake, you might not be transit dependent. You might be in a situation where you have transportation options. A lot of times in these particular locations that we have, there are people that don't have a form of transportation that would benefit from something like this. So I think that's where you're getting that particular focus from. And could you put a pickup location at work it out with the North Shore Apartments or some other place, but they'd have to get there. You'd never be able to do it on a individual residence by individual residence basis. Part of the beauty of the way this works too is to the extent that you're somewhat consolidated, and I think we are, but if you look at like the options here, the more frequent that you can get your times, it's more consistent. So, you have, in this case, in White Bear Lake, they have a 3-bus system, and, about every 15 minutes or so, there's a pickup and a drop-off that's happening. So you have a situation where, that the more regular you can make it, the more usable it becomes for people. So.
Well, I guess I would say that, with the surveys that come back, if there's a need for it or a want, I think that it's a great program. And, as much as I would agree with you, it'd be nice to get the whole community. You got to get your biggest bang for your buck, and going to those senior centers, you're going to be able to service the masses, I guess. To at least for a first year or two. So are you saying that if we were to pilot it, would come out of the EDA's budget? And is that about $15,000? Is that kind of the?
Yeah, that's one option. I think it's certainly the type of, I think the connection you'd make is, with the route where it's bringing people to businesses, you're making a connection with an opportunity for them to transact. But yeah, it really is something you'd have to probably want to think about from a long-term perspective, the EDA piloting, and then finding some long-term funding solution for it if it was successful. So I think it's certainly a legitimate discussion point as far as the type of thing that adds to quality of place, quality of life in the community, and that. And then if it doesn't work out, if it's not utilized, if the numbers aren't there after you've given it a reasonable period of time to kind of, ramp up, then, maybe it isn't something that you continue on with. And I think it would have to be a part of the council's budget discussion in future years.
Has New Tracks looked at Forest Lake and given us kind of a preliminary ridership assessment, anything?
Their recommendation really was to complete this survey that they laid out and give you an understanding of what you think you can get from those designated facilities. But ultimately, you're just going to have to try it, and I think that's part of it. That gets partly into the terms of whatever agreement you might be looking at. If you just pilot it for 1 year and have the ability to opt out, they're not necessarily having to ramp up and make additional capital investment to accommodate this. This is basically repurposing, one of their 40 or two of their 40 buses that are idle for this period of time, before they go back to providing their client services and their peak times for that.
Sure.
How many do the buses carry?
That I don't know.
6 to 8.
Is it something like that?
How many?
6 to 8, I would say.
Also not very many.
I suppose it depends on structures and, that kind of space. But I think somewhere in that range.
They traditionally do have, my experience, and not, we could find that out for sure, is they probably have a couple different models of buses available, some a little smaller and some a little bigger.
One thing to keep in mind, not to tell the council what to think, but these people that are retired and living in the retirement homes, most of them have been taxpayers in the city of Forest Lake for many, many years and chose to retire in the town that they love. We need to think about taking care of them in their old age and keeping them in the town. They've been here, they deserve it, they've earned it, and they paid it. And the places that they're staying in, the community, the Cherrywood Point and the other senior centers, they're paying taxes. It's part of a healthy, vibrant, taking care of our senior population image that we really want to keep in Forest Lake and we want to grow. And we're trying to grow through Act on Alzheimer's and more awareness of that. And Act on Alzheimer's has been recognized nationwide. Boston wants to use us for an example. And it's part of moving forward. So just don't forget about these people were taxpayers all their lives most of them in Forest Lake and want to stay here. So that's all I have to say. Just take care of them.
Thank you, Jenny.
Well, I think that I think the discussion needs to take place, that's for sure, and get down to the nit and gritty of exactly what the cost would be to the EDA and, you know, what funding is available. And I think we're just in the very early stages of this thing, but I certainly think that it needs to be looked at and see what we can do for folks the best we can here and see how much money is available out there. So.
Yeah, I guess my other concern would be flexibility. You know, if they're gonna take the bus to go shopping, you know, I think a lot of them do plan making 2 or 3 stops sometimes. You know, they don't always just go to one place and back home. So if we're having this type of route and, you know, they can't get to some of the merchants that they might need to go to, you know, go across the bridge to Menards instead of Cub or something like that. I think there needs to be some flexibility with, you know, the route. I mean, it can't be just a rigid, we're stopping here and that's it. So I don't know who's talking with them, but I think anywhere along that route, if somebody needs to stop, and that would be, I think, a part of the thing I would look at too, is if we're really going to try and accommodate people, get people to use it, that we need to have a couple bends in the rules anyway.
Well, this survey gave them the opportunity of listing additional places, but with the route as it would be, there'd be no problem with stopping at Northern Quacks or Perkins or Walgreens or, you know, those that are away. And there was a fair amount of people that said they wanted to go downtown. You know, so whether that's for going to an attorney or going to an accountant or going to a dentist or wherever, you know, but that was also one of the areas of desire. You know, so and I think that based on our discussion with Scott earlier was that there could be, and then he's doing that quite fair, a lot of flexibility. You know, if the demand is there to stop at such, if there's one every 4 weeks that wants to go over downtown, we're trying to figure out something different. But if there's something that has some demand, you know, they will react to it. He's quite interested in Forest Lake.
What about the hospital? Would they go up there, cross over the line?
And Aaron should address that probably, but that's a separate setup. I think shopping is one, and then health services is a second. And I think that they want to, and that's what they're doing in White Bear. They're getting the shopping one established, and then they're going to add the medical. The one thing about the medical is that, and I know Kathy Bystrom talked about this at a meeting that we were at recently, that they can schedule, take one day, if this, let's say the medical bus is going to run on Thursday from 10 to 2, they could schedule the patients that don't have transportation during that time period. When they need it. You know, right now, places like Fairview are providing a subsidy. They're giving them a voucher to take a cab, type of thing. So they're already involved in working with those that don't have transportation. And this would probably be and they solve it for their cooperation as well. And I think that maybe those places, it might be easier to get a little bit of the subsidy from, I don't know where our contribution from, rather than the big box stores.
Makes sense. Any other questions or discussion? All right. Thank you, Gary. So we'll move on to the business retention visit summary. Anybody wants to jump in on that one?
I have nothing new.
No, and I haven't had a chance, all that's going to change now if the work schedule is getting a bit lighter, so that I'll have a chance to go visit the folks that I intend to visit. So it hasn't happened yet, but it's
Probably will be a good time between the holidays here.
right,
anyway.
exactly. So I don't have any real updates on it. So
Anybody else with any?
Ran through my list on a previous meeting.
Okay.
Mark and I met with Tyler Hilsebeck, and my goal is to take Tyler's new brochures, which are evidently still being printed. He was going to have some last week, but when they get here, and then have a master list of where we go and track what we're doing, and give you some feedback then. But I'd like that brochure in hand because it's a wonderful thing to have in your back pocket when you're visiting with these people. So you can offer them something in the general conversation if it comes out that they have a need.
All right, sounds great. Thank you. Anything else to, go ahead, Aaron.
All right, I just have a quick other here. So one of the things we've been discussing is just our city center signage. And overall, we have the sign, of course, on 61, and it's the electronic sign. The fire department has some wall-mounted signage that's helpful for identifying it, but we've heard from people that they don't always understand that the police department's here and/or the city hall. They just don't always understand all of what's in here. And so one of the things staff has talked about is if we could put some signage on the building. I know above here we have like just the logo and things like that. But the working idea would be is on this face here, on the council chamber's face, would be to put some wall-mounted signage, basically the exact same type of signage that is on the fire department. So it's compatible, and this is the same company that did the initial signage in the building. But just Forest Lake City Center and then City Hall and Police, so people know specifically those two elements are within the building. So we did get a price on those. To get that done, it would be $6,480. And there might be some additional charge blocking by others. And just curious if the EDA was inclined to approve that. It would come out of the construction proceeds for the city center that were originally allocated, that are now currently allocated toward paying down, the debt payments. But I've heard that. I don't know if you guys have heard a similar concern expressed. I know our police chief has heard that a number of times, and so we just thought we would bring that forward for your consideration. So be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the request would be to authorize the work with fourth dimension signs.
Can you, there we go. Thank you.
Do you have, so it's non-illuminated. It's a dark wall out here to start with. Do we have can they do any kind of mock-up of what it would look like?
So, this would be the signage. They have not done it specifically on what this wall would be, and I think we'd have to assess whether it would need to be illuminated or not. Traditionally, our hours are during the day is when people are really trying to find us. But I had a similar thought on whether or not we would want to try to backlight
The police part of it, anyway. I think.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, ground lit or something. But
No, I don't disagree. I think that's an issue that needs to be explored.
Light on. What size are the letters for the fire department? Are they the same size as the city hall police?
Yeah, so it actually, in the fire department, I think it says something like Forest Lake Fire in this 2-foot lettering.
So they are 2-foot letters.
And then underneath it, it's in this smaller lettering, the 16-inch letter, it says Station 1, I think, or something like that, so.
yeah, I guess I'd like to see what it looks like on the wall. Before I go ahead, I don't know if I like the all capital letters on it, kind of
Oh, I do.
shouting out at you. I don't know, is fire department all capitals or?
I believe so,
Like to have some
yeah, but I can
consistency.
double check that. I think what we asked for was basically mirror image of what was on the fire facing, so, but we can confirm that.
Okay.
Is Forest Lake City Center in need of as much declaration, or is City Hall and Police what is really trying to be said here?
I agree.
Seeing as how that the fire department is almost self-described just by virtue of the building itself, and they have their declaration. We say Forest Lake City Center out on the highway sign, do we not? Just curious if in fact you could bring the price tag down by essentially saying the two things that seem to be wanting to be said.
Yeah, I think you could certainly go either way with that. You know, the area is branded as the city center. I think the idea is that would, you know, be reinforced there, that these are sub-elements of, but it wouldn't be a reach to just put city hall and police on there either.
I would tend, that was my thoughts, and maybe that is in the 2-foot, you know, so it's, you're not gonna miss it. And then just get a price and maybe see what they can do to light it. You know, maybe you get it for that same price with being lit, but you don't have the repetitive of the Forest Lake City Center when it is out on the boulevard.
We can ask for them to do that, and then we'll try to engage an electrical contractor to look at a lighting solution, because these aren't backlit, these are standard. We'll look at that, and then see if they can throw it on on a face. I did ask for that. It sounded like it was a little bit of an effort, but it can't be that complicated.
I can see where ground mount would work to
Yeah.
light specifically. I don't know if there's a pole out there that's anywhere conducive to a secondary fixture that would shine on it as well.
Then the other thought is at the time when this was priced out, if they were the low bid, and if not, should we be looking to engage a local contractor instead of someone out of Arden Hills? I don't know if that's a.
Yeah, and we simply went with them because they were the ones that fabricated the other signage in the building, and you know, we're looking to be consistent with that. So,
Would this meet our sign ordinance,
yes, yep, it will.
even though it's not lit or anything?
Yeah, we're governmental is pretty much exempt from most of those requirements.
Well, we're exempt, but, I mean, I wouldn't want us to bend the rules over what we would require for a business.
It's got to be.
Yeah, and I don't think we would. I don't think we require lighting, but I'll double check on that.
Okay.
It's not my day to day. So.
All right.
Do I get kind of totally out of line? Why are there no signs on Highway 61 with Police Department, City Hall? Way signs like there is for the library and Fenway Park, and when you got along 97, you got way signs there, but there's nothing along 61 that says that this, I mean, that would do a lot, I would think, in educating where the services are.
Yeah, we can look at the wayfinding signage. We're actually looking into that for something else right now, so we could certainly see what the MnDOT criteria would be. We have a little bit of a unique situation of, I think we finally got people trained to not go into the emergency entrance and exit. And depending on where you offset those signs, you know, we don't want to create that confusion, but we can look into that. It seems like that would be reasonable.
If I remember right, I thought we discussed that when this was going up, and there was something with MnDOT where the quantity of signs along 61 were kind of excessive already. But
Yeah, I'll double check that.
We're checking into it again.
Yeah,
I
I'll
guess.
double check on that.
All right, thank you. Chris, any updates from you?
Mr. President, Commissioners, good evening. I just wanted to a couple of quick updates for you. I know that Tyler Hilsebeck has been at the Chamber a couple times, and Rotary, and at the EDA Business Breakfast. And if you have any feedback or comments on the Open to Business program, I'm always open to suggestions and ideas. I know he's got regular office hours here now at City Hall. Thank you to the city staff for letting him have a location here in Forest Lake where he can meet with businesses and entrepreneurs. So any feedback you want to provide, I'm looking for comments and suggestions. We're always open to ideas and ways to make it better. But I think so far what I'm hearing is that the Open to Business program is being well received, and Tyler's staying fairly busy up here. A lot of meetings happening with local businesses. One other thing I should give recognition and mention to is that the county, we are meeting monthly with our economic development work group, and Aaron and Dan have been faithful attenders in helping us develop the work plan going forward for 2017 through 2019. One of the things in the plan was to identify resources to create a pre-development finance fund for cities that could utilize county dollars for things like a wetland delineation and engineering studies, feasibility studies, market studies, those types of things. We're putting the policies and guidelines in place right now. I hope to have those finalized by the end of the year and get them out to you for review and input and consideration. And the county board has approved the funding for that program, so we're looking like we're going to have about $135,000 to help cities with areas that you're looking to improve that don't have utilities, for example, and you want to do a feasibility study to say, does it make sense for this to be the city's next business park? Now the county can help you with those activities, so keep that in the back of your mind as we move forward. But hopefully we'll begin taking applications in March, and we're looking at the program being a pilot program to see if it works, and if it goes well, we'll look at asking for additional resources as we move forward. So happy to answer any questions, or if you have any input, that would be wonderful. I'd appreciate it.
All right. Any questions for Chris? Well, I appreciate everything you guys have been doing here, and
Appreciate it.
really, I think bringing our Forest Lake businesses up to speed, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ted, how's everything at the chamber?
Thanks. Just a couple quick updates. At this Christmas time of the year, the chamber members like to give back, so we support an initiative called the Spare Change Challenge. It's put together by the Health Up program, and it supports the Family Pathways Food Shelf. So chamber member businesses, many of them have donation jars in by their cash registers that you can drop your spare change into. And last year we raised about $5,000 for the Family Pathways Food Shelf. So that is going on. And then in 2018, we'll be doing quite a few more of our Chamber U programs. These are the business education and professional development programs. We've done them intermittently over the past 2 years, and we're going to ramp it up and try to do 6 of them next year. They've been very well received. What we're essentially doing is bringing in, kind of the people that you might pay to attend a day seminar somewhere down in the Twin Cities, and we're bringing them here locally and doing like a 2 to 3 hour workshop, and they've been quite well received and quite popular, so we'll be doing more of those in 2018. I think that's all I have. Thanks.
That's great to hear. Thank you. All right, any other business to bring forward? Not, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'd
Go
like,
ahead.
I guess, make comments. Based on the email that came out this morning with Julie Fleur's resignation, I guess some thoughts about bringing some new person on. One of them would be Gary right here, who's been very active and sounds like I thought at one point had some interest involved, but maybe not.
I did it at one time, I did have, I kind of decided I'd stay with the planning commission.
Okay. We appreciate everything you do.
I'm a good volunteer and I raise my hand whenever needed, but I'm missing in the winter time, so it's hard to, deviate.
All right.
Yeah, and I'd just note as well that the only regular meeting scheduled for the EDA in December is on December 4th, so just a change in the normal calendar.
I remain an advocate for the 7-member body, so if we move toward that, it would be nice to do some recruiting and see who might be interested in joining this body. The idea for the 7 members remains intact.
All right. Any other input? I'll try that again. Look for a motion for adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.